It is a real pleasure for me to be here. There are so many things that I would like to tell you that I really do not know where to start from, in fact. But I want to start with telling you I used to be a university teacher, and I always wanted my class to be rather informal, so I would like it to be more of a conversation than a lecture. So if you feel interrupting during the presentation, go ahead, and I will gladly answer all your questions if only I can. Thank you for that kind introduction. Indeed, it is my third posting in America as a Polish diplomat. I started 15 years ago in Chicago, which is a very unique and specific city for a Polish diplomat because of the Polish population. Huge Polish population, only in Illinois close to 1 million people. Chicago is considered to be the second biggest Polish town now, after Warsaw. So it is a unique place to work, and I consider it a great honor that I received a number of awards at the end of my tenure in Chicago from the Polish community there, which even voted me the Man of the Year in which has not happened to any Polish consul, especially in Chicago, where the Polish community is not easy to work with because it's so huge, it's so diverse, it's so not always. It's enough if I tell you that there are over 300 Polish organizations in Chicago. By education, I am really a graduate of the English faculty in Lublin, in Poland. I wrote my MA thesis on British contemporary drama, the theatre of the absurd, which will not be part of this lecture today. Although politics today, to a great extent, is the theatre of the absurd, more and more often. Anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Poland because I consider this the most important part of my diplomatic job. My consular job, of course, is to be at service to the Polish citizens who live in the United States. And I have a crew of 10 people in Los Angeles who deal with anything from issuing Polish passports to citizenship to visas for foreign people who need a visa to visit Poland, and so on and so forth. But the part of the consular work which has always been of greatest interest to me is public diplomacy. What I've been doing and trying to do in America for the 9 years that I've spent here, Chicago, Washington, and now LA, is go around this country, meet Americans, and tell them the story of Poland. Even if, when I was coming to LA last September, I had a number of meetings with American diplomats in Warsaw, and they told me, go there and tell them about Poland because they do not know about Poland in America. And that's what I'm doing, and that's why I wanted to come here when I first met people from your university, including your president and Rusty Butler at a function in Beverly Hills sometime last year, and they invited me to come to Utah Valley University. Poland, I titled this Why Poland? Because this is in fact the question that we are trying to answer. Why Poland in political terms, why Poland in economic terms, why Poland as a tourist destination, and so on and so forth. To answer this question, we should start with obvious things like geographical position of Poland. Poland is the bridge between the East and the West. Poland is the very center of Europe. It is less than 2 hours by plane from London or Paris It is an hour by plane from Vienna or Berlin. This geographical position is responsible for a huge part of Polish history, including the tragic chapters of Polish history. If I say so that this is the very center of Europe, one should, and the bridge between the East and the West, one should think that this geographical position should be an advantage to us. Paradoxically enough, it wasn't. For many centuries, it wasn't. It was a disadvantage to Poland and its development as a country. We do not have time to go back to history, but if you follow what happened to Poland towards the end of the 18th century, when we were partitioned and disappear from the map of Europe for 123 years, you would understand what I mean by saying that this geographical position between the two superpowers, Russia and Germany, was more often a disadvantage than an advantage. Today, Poland is a completely different country, and I would like to concentrate on Poland today, on Poland in the last 25 years, when we've made an enormous trip in every sense. In political sense, a trip from a country which was ruled by the regime in Moscow. In economic terms, from a country which, with the inflation of 600%, to the country which is the sixth power of the European Union today. In everyday life terms, from a country with, when in 1980s the only article that was available on shelves in Poland was vinegar, which by no means is the popular ingredient of Polish cuisine, to the country today with America-like shopping malls and a very high level of life. Poland is a small country in American terms. It is not only 5 times smaller than Alaska itself, it is smaller than California, it is even smaller than New Mexico, but it is much, much bigger in European standards. It is 8th most populated country in Europe, and 9th as far as the territory is concerned. 38.5 million people currently live in Poland. There is one specific factor which I think it is important when I talk with you, especially with people in America, about Poland, is a word about our society. Especially, as I say, in America, because you are considered as the most diverse society possibly. Poland is just the opposite. Poland is the most homogeneous society you can imagine. 96% of the population are ethnic Poles. 90% of them declare to be Roman Catholics. So in every term, we are very similar. We have very little diversity in our country. Poland is a lowland area. 75% of our land is less than 200 meters above sea level. But we have everything in Poland, from the Baltic Sea to the Tatra Mountains. So in this respect, we are similar to Utah, because there are skiing possibilities in Poland. And 9,000 lakes, which very often are connected with historical places of beauty like our castles. The climate in Poland is a good illustration of Vivaldi's 4 seasons. We do get all of them. from freezing temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius in in winter to almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Main Polish cities, of course, I start with Warsaw, sometimes referred to as Phoenix City, because this is what Warsaw looked like in 1945 at the end of World War II. And this is what the city looks like today. This is our new national stadium built for Euro 2012, the soccer championship, the Royal Castle, everything built from the scratch after World War II. Kraków, the old town, the old capital of Poland, again the city which may illustrate the differences between our two countries. When this university was founded, your country has not even been discovered. 1362, the Jagiellonian University in Kraków was founded. Today, Kraków is considered to be one of the pearls of that part of Europe, and alongside with Prague in the Czech Republic, is viewed as one of the most attractive cities in Europe. Last one, I chose Gdańsk, again for a historic reason. This time from recent history. Gdańsk, the shipyard of Gdańsk, was the birthplace of the Polish solidarity movement, to which I will come back in a second, and this is Gdańsk today. As I said, we do not have time to go back to the history of Poland, but it would be good to at least have a look at these two maps, showing the map of Poland before World War II and after World War II. As you can see, the boundaries dramatically changed. The pre-World War II Poland stretched to what today is part of the Ukrainian territory and Belarus territory, but we didn't have the territories on the Oder River on the west hand side. Mr. Stalin, at the end of World War II, unfortunately with the content of some of the American and British leaders, moved Poland westwards, trying to create the Soviet Empire. And they took all this eastern part from Poland and gave us these lands on the west of the Oder River. As a result, Europe at the time of the Cold War was divided into two camps, the so-called Warsaw Pact and the Democratic Europe. As you can see here, in those days, Poland had only three neighboring countries: the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. This was the situation from 1945 until 1989. Now, look what happened in 1989. The map completely changed. None of the countries of our neighbors exist anymore. We have now seven neighboring countries. They're completely different. Germany united, so there's no East Germany, there's Germany. The Soviet Union collapsed, so there's no Soviet Union. We have Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania. And the Czechoslovakia split into the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic, so we have two down south. How was this possible, one would wonder? It was possible because of the Polish solidarity. In fact, Solidarity was born in 1980 in the shipyard of Gdańsk as a trade union movement. Then it, of course, acquired a political role and the leading role in bringing Poland back to the democratic family and bringing not only Poland back, but also the rest of Central Europe back to the family, the democratic family. The events that we want to celebrate this year are three what we call joyful anniversaries in Poland. The first one is 25 years since the transformation of 1989. We'll come back to it in a minute. Then 15 years of Poland's joining NATO, and last 10 years of Poland in the European Union. Let's go back to June 1989 for a while. Gary Cooper, from this famous poster based on High Noon West, was the symbolic guy for the elections in Poland in June of 1989, the first election, free elections in Poland after World War II. Solidarity, as I said, not as a trade union. The trade union Solidarity did not run in the elections, but there were committees set up from Solidarity members, and Solidarity had their own candidates running in these elections. The elections were only partly free. The Senate, the higher chamber of the Polish parliament, was completely freely elected. And out of 100 senators elected, 99 were Solidarity people. So this was the moment of huge change. From June 4th, 1989, Poland no longer was ruled by the communist regime. Poland became a democratic country, and the first government democratically elected under the Prime Minister Tadeusz Mazowiecki started work in the autumn of 1989. What is, however, crucial about this development in Europe is that it was not only Poland that was free. Others followed our example. Czech Republic, or at that time Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, the Baltic states, and last but not least, the most symbolic event of the whole transformation, the fall of the Berlin Wall in November of 1989. This is remembered by the world as the end of the system, as the end of the communist system in that part of Europe. But it is my duty to remind the world that the Berlin Wall would not have fallen if it hadn't been for the Polish solidarity, which started the whole transformation, went through the nightmare of martial law that was imposed in Poland in December of 1981, then had to go underground for a couple of years. In the summer of 1988, strikes in Poland began again, which led to the roundtable talks in the spring of 1989, and eventually to the elections I just mentioned in June that year. What is also important about the transformation in Poland is that we always wanted to share it with the world. And we shared it not only with the countries I just mentioned and enumerated, we still share it with others. This is the latest example. These pictures come from June of this year, from Warsaw, when the first Polish Solidarity Award was presented. It was presented to the long-time leader of Crimea Tatars, here by the President of Poland. The celebration of the 25th anniversary of our elections was a truly international occasion. President Obama, Secretary Kerry, everybody was there to witness the celebration and to witness this award being presented to Crimea Tatars. What is important about this award, which I would like to share with you, is that it is a pretty decent award in money terms. It's €1 million award. €1 million award, 250,000 go to the laureate himself, and the rest of the money goes to support a democratic process somewhere in the world, which is pointed out and selected by the laureate of this award. And this is how it is going to work in future as well. The next anniversary that I mentioned earlier was our NATO accession anniversary, which took place in 1999, so 15 years ago. At that time, Poland was accepted to NATO thanks to a very active action by the Polish diaspora in the United States, which sent hundreds of thousands of letters to decision makers, to local politicians, asking them for their support on the issue of enlarging NATO. Eventually, these local people and the pressure which came from all over America to the Hill in Washington resulted in Poland being accepted to NATO in the spring of 1999. After that, we fought with the American soldiers in a number of locations all over the world. But recent developments in Europe gave us another reason why we think it was such a wise decision to get to NATO at that time, because of our own safety. The reason is called the Ukrainian crisis. Of course, you must follow this as students of international politics, so you know that it started with the protests in Maidan, the square in Kiev in Ukraine, which then turned into very violent riots all over Ukraine, which then was followed by the annexation of Crimea by Russia, and the latest and most tragic development is that Malaysian plane, which went down last year, shot by most probably the Russian rebels, which are fighting with the Ukrainian army in the eastern part of Ukraine. I will come back to Ukraine if you want to later on. And the last anniversary for Poland is 10 years in the European Union. We entered the European Union on May 1st, 2004. This is the beginning of European Union in 1952. It went then through a number of enlargements. The one important for Poland was the 2004 enlargement, when 10 countries were accepted. After this, there were two more. Later, Romania and Bulgaria was accepted to the European Union, and last year it was Croatia. So at the moment we have 28 countries in the European Union. And association, which is, it looks like this today, this is the European Union, an association whose motto is united in diversity. I'm mentioning this because I remember in 2003 when I was the consul in Chicago, and there was a referendum in Poland on whether to join the European Union or not. In a referendum, in an election, Poles abroad also are eligible to vote, and Poles in Chicago were eligible to vote in this referendum as well. And I remember how hard I had to work to convince them that it would be a good thing for Poland to join the European Union, because they were thinking that we will lose our national identity, that Germans will come and buy the land in Poland, that we will stop speaking Polish, and so on and so forth. By a very small margin, if I remember correctly, less than 400 votes, Chicago saved itself from being the only Polish city voting no to the perspective of joining the European Union. Eventually, the result was yes, but as I say, by a very small margin. So with fears of what the new reality, European Union reality would look like, we joined the European Union as a new member in 2004. And today we know that it was a very good decision. 10 years after joining the European Union, Poland is number 6 most powerful economy of the European Union, of the 28 countries. Poland is considered to be the sixth most important player in political terms in Brussels and in Strasbourg.
You said we could ask questions.
Sure.
Being part of the European Union, does that give Poland more strength to resist countries like Russia to take them and hold it in the future?
You know, frankly speaking, I don't believe there is a threat of Russia taking Poland over.
Or any other country.
Of course, we are more powerful being part of the European Union in every sense of the word. We are more secure, we are more powerful economically, we are more powerful politically. Poland has been the greatest beneficiary of all the European Union countries since we joined the European Union, both in the previous financial perspective, which was for the years 2007-2013. Poland got most money from Brussels. And now in the next financial perspective, 2014-2020, we've already secured 106 billion euro for Poland from Brussels. This is the money that changes Poland almost overnight. Anybody who was in Poland previously and goes together now can see the difference between what Poland looked like before and what it looks like today. These 10 years made us a completely different country in economic terms. Let me give you just a few examples. I do not want to get into details of economy, but I would like to tell you that 10 years ago, Poland and Ukraine had GDPs on the same level. 10 years later, our GDP is 3 times bigger than the Ukrainian. After joining EU, our GDP grew by almost 50%. Poland outperformed not only other countries of the region, but also European Union as a whole. In 2003, Poland's GDP per capita in purchasing power standards amounted to 48% of EU average. Now it is 67% of the EU average. Thanks to the free movement of goods, we have seen an unprecedented success of Polish companies, which in 10 years have exported goods to the European Union worth almost 3.5 billion Polish zloty, which is twice the value of Poland's GDP. In the last 10 years, foreigners have made 630 million trips to Poland. Over 40 million out of which as tourists. So if we go very briefly and very quickly through the Polish economy, this is the inflation, at the moment less than 2%. This ends with 2011, at the moment it is. This is the foreign direct investment flow to Poland, just to illustrate how well we are doing and compared to other European Union countries in GDP, which shows you that in fact Poland is the only European Union country which could go through 2008-2009 recession with a positive GDP. In fact, since the transformation in Poland, so for 25 years, we never had a negative GDP as the only European Union country. That is, we have Polish export and imports here as well. And finally, this which illustrates the current situation, 1.6% GDP growth in 2013. projected to be 2.5 this year by European Union Commission. GDP per capita $21,000 over, inflation 0.9% in 2014, total trade turnover $484 billion. Free movement of goods, thanks to the European Union, goods and services, in fact, is also something that matters as one of the strengths of the Polish economy, and access to single market of 500 million consumers, because this is the joint population of the European Union. All this resulted in the nickname Poland received recently, the Green Island, because it was the only country of the European Union which could remain on the positive side of GDP growth throughout all these years. We do have cooperation with the United States. In 2013, for the first time in history, we reached a trade surplus with the United States, over $1 billion of 10 billion turnover. Poland is currently US's 49th trading partner for exports and 47th for imports. European Union has a number of problems to face at the moment. One of them is the budget, which, as all budgets, is too little. But as I said, we were the lucky ones to get most money from Brussels compared to other countries of the European Union. One of the biggest problems of the European Union today is Great Britain. Great Britain, which keeps asking this question to be or not to be part of the European Union, and keeps threatening European Union, threatening Brussels that they will step out of the European Union. Mr. Cameron promised a referendum in Britain. If they win the elections coming in 2015, they will have a referendum and decide whether they want to leave the European Union. Before this referendum, however, another important thing will happen this year in Great Britain, because there will be a referendum in Scotland whether they want to stay in Great Britain. And if they opt out, this will bring also a new situation for the whole European Union, because the rules of the European Union say that if you are part of a larger country, as Scotland is part of Great Britain, and you become a separate country, you have to start the accession process all over again from the very beginning. So if the Scots vote according to their hearts, they will probably vote to leave Great Britain. If they vote according to the reason, they will probably stay, because they would have to then start the accession process again. This is the European Parliament after recent elections from last month, which is, as I heard directly from Mr. Barroso visiting LA a few weeks ago, which is an important wake-up call for the European Union, because about 25% now of the 760 members of the European Parliament are people representing anti-European Union parties. So they grew bigger. The votes are still there. We are okay as far as the decisions which needs to be taken are concerned. They will probably be taken, but there will be much more noise coming from these anti-European Union parties. So we have a situation now that the anti-EU parties grow in power, but the biggest party is still the European People's Party, which means that we should be okay with developing European Union in the future. A word about EU-US relations, because this is the most important now factor in our relation. It's called TTIP or TTIP, and stands for Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. The negotiations are underway. TTIP is something that would create the largest single market in the world. It aims at removing trade barriers in a wide range of economic sectors to make it easier to buy and sell goods and services between the EU and US. If I remember correctly, if this agreement is reached, we would be together responsible for about 50% of the world's of the world's GDP, US and the European Union together, and a population of 800 million people. On top of cutting tariffs across all sectors, the EU and the US want to tackle barriers behind the customs border, such as differences in technical regulations. Probably you know more examples. I remember from my own experience just one. There are such different and strange things happening to us that, for example, it turns out that the indicator light in the car in Europe has to be orange. In America, it very often is red. So there's no way to register a car from America in Europe. And until such differences exist, there are many barriers in cooperation and in developing common market. The negotiations are underway, as I said. There were 5 rounds completed. The 6th round is coming soon in Washington, and it is assumed that it will bring TTIP agreement, if it is concluded and signed, it will bring to all 50 states an increase in employment by about 740 million, thousand jobs, 740,000 jobs. Independent research shows that TTIP could boost the EU economy by 120 million euro, the US economy by 90 million euro, and the rest of the world by 100 billion euro. There is a big pressure on us, the consular corps in LA. LA has the 3rd biggest consular corps in the world after Hong Kong and New York. There are 98 consulates in LA, 66 of them career consulates, the rest honorary. There's a big pressure on us to work towards promoting TTIP agreement. We work with the American Chamber of Commerce, for example, on an everyday basis, and American Chamber of Commerce supports TTIP, but it is also true that it will be a political decision because it will have to be approved by the Congress and it will have to be approved by the European Parliament. I cannot tell you whether they will be able to reach the agreement by the end of 2015 as it originally was planned. They may not, because there are a number of problems and difficult areas of negotiations, and we are aware that we have a pretty strong opposition towards TTIP in Europe itself, in the European Union itself. I just mentioned the bigger representation of anti-European Union parties in the European Union Parliament. Getting towards the end of this presentation, I would like to go back to Poland for just a few seconds and to people, because I think that people constitute a crucial part of the answer to the question, why Poland? If I were to name 5 most famous Poles ever, I would chronologically go from Copernicus to Chopin, Curie Skłodowska, John Paul II, Polish Pope, and Lech Wałęsa, the leader of Solidarity and the first president of Poland after 1989. Of course, we could go through a number of recent Nobel Prize winners, starting again from Wałęsa. This guy you may know, he works in America, but he's Polish. Polish Oscar winners, a number of them, including Mr. Polanski, who got it for the movie called Pianist, going back to the Polish history of World War II. Finally, my favorite, that is Polish jazz stars, with Michał Urbaniak, famous Polish pianists, jazz pianist Andrzej Jagodziński and Leszek Możdżer. We are good in sports as well, but something that from these people, those who are into soccer would definitely know Lewandowski. He's now playing for Bayern Munich. You should know Marcin Gorta, the only NBA player from Poland, now playing for Washington Wizards, and maybe Steven Janikowski, who is in Oakland, a kicker for Oakland. What is more important for me is that the knowledge about Polish people in America starts and finishes with two Polish names in most cases, Kościuszko and Pułaski. This is what an average American knows, that Kościuszko and Pułaski were here and helped this country gain independence. 2008, I wrote a book called 400 Years of Polish Immigrants to America, because at that time we celebrated 400 years since the first Pole came to Jamestown in Virginia. In 2007, you may remember, America celebrated 400 years of Jamestown, the first settlement. And in 2008, we celebrated 400 years of the first Poles in America, because the first 5 Polish guys came to Jamestown only a year after the first settlement, in 1608. And I wanted to do something that would last more than just an evening celebration of this, and so we came up with the idea of this book. And of course this book presented Kościuszko and Pułaski, but I remember how vivid discussions I had with a number of Americans when they learned that the guy who invented Crazy Horse is Polish, or rather was Polish because he died, that one of your legends of baseball, Mr. Musiał from St. Louis, was Polish, that Liberace was half Polish, that Scott Paraziński is a Polish astronaut 5 times in space already, that Stephanie Powers is completely Polish, speaking Polish with her mother at home, that Coach K, your famous basketball coach, is also Polish, and he's called Coach K because of the name nobody can pronounce in the country, which is Krzyżewski. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple Computers, is Polish again. Martha Stewart. And finally Warren Winiarski, a nice guy from Napa Valley who in fact brought California onto the world's wine map, because being a professor of chemistry at the University of Chicago in in the 1970s, I think it was, he decided to move with the family to Napa Valley, where he bought a vineyard, and 3 years later, his Cabernet Sauvignon won the most famous Paris competition as the best wine, and is now at the National Museum in Washington, D.C. The last thing, I want to finish on a lighter note and present to you an 11-minute long documentary, which I created when I was working in Warsaw as the person responsible for promotional activities of Polish diplomatic missions abroad. There was a journalist, a musical journalist specializing in music in Warsaw, who over the years collected a number of interviews with different world celebrities, most of them coming from America. And we used these interviews to create a little movie which is called Polska Tak, which means Poland, yes, I would like Emmy to help me with starting the movie. And let me tell you, when we put this movie on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs YouTube channel, people started watching it, and my colleagues responsible for the internet would come to me and say that the number of hits is comparable with the number of hits after a plane disaster. Within 4 weeks, 400,000 people watched that movie, and some of them leave the feedback. 96% of the feedback left was positive to that movie. You will enjoy. If we take this, it will be with the English subtitle. But we need. Hang on. How do we do it? No, we need to see.
Oh,
it
get rid
first
of that.
all.
Yeah, sorry. So many technical things. Couldn't get PowerPoint off. Just a second. And then more technically. Yeah, let's just close.
That's better.
Okay. We thought we had the sound. Let me get it turned up.
But we need to start it over and do something. We don't have any amplifiers here. No.
Yes.
So that might be a problem.
Sorry.
So we can find this on YouTube.
Yes, you can find it on YouTube.
Try to get some sound going here. Sorry, guys.
And the volume, if you can move it closer to the right, that volume button.
In the bottom.
Right, if you move the mouse to the right. There you go.
My dad always says Yakshmaj, and I said, don't.
My grandfather's Polish.
Oh, I mean, this one's broken down.
Jesiu. Rejsia. Yeah, Jesiu. I have a Polish aunt, and yes, and I have lots of Polish friends. Where I come from in Canada, there are a lot of Polish people.
I'm completely Polish, actually. Well, not completely. I mean, I guess it's like something like 75% Polish. My grandparents are Polish immigrants. My true last name is Mauer. My grandmother's last name is Vilk. So it's Wolf and Mauer, which is bricklayer, right?
You want to say hello? Go ahead. I say hello to everybody in Poland. I love you all.
I think it was in Krakow that we had this lunch in a restaurant that's in a cave. You know about this place? That was something. Oh, I went to Poland. I made a wonderful film there called Prince of Shadows with Greg Peel on the road. And God, it was cold there. But I had a wonderful pair of shoes there. They have great shoemakers in Poland. Still, London and Warsaw have great shoemakers.
When I think about Poland, I think that very faithful people, very with big value.
One of the greatest cavalries in the history of mankind was the Polish cavalry in the 1640s. We defeated the Muslims in Austria. And the French sided with the Muslims. But you guys saved Europe. You guys saved Europe.
My father was in the RAF during the war, and he always told me with great pride of his Polish friends, because his Polish friends, he always said that they were the first people into the cockpit when scramble, when the Germans were above in the planes. He said the Polish pilots would be the first people much admired in my country as a very, very brave man. My father came back with many stories and made many friends and was very pleased to be part of their world.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much followed by so many to so few.
Do you think it's linked, isn't it?
Oh yeah, true.
In the army? Because apparently it was after a Polish general who had lost two fingers in a fight, and then so they would do like that. That's the first thing that comes into my mind.
Well, one of the things I'm very interested in Poland, I was very taken and impressed with the revolution in Poland, like Czechoslovakia, the Velvet Revolution that came after Lech Walesa. He led Poland to a new place. Because I'm blessed with being in a country that has freedom, at least at the moment. You're very interested in other countries having that same opportunity. And one individual galvanize a group of people to move towards a freedom that doesn't exist. That's pretty impressive. So I'm very admiring of Poland and the Polish people and how they changed their lives and moved to a better place.
They have very tumultuous history, and people have fought over this land for centuries and centuries. And I know the Polish people have been through a lot, especially in the last 60 or 70 years. And so I was very anxious to see what it was going to be like. Being here, it's a beautiful place. I mean, I love Krakow. And what I really like, I like the Polish people. There's a real sense here of people are hungry, they want to change, and I think they want to prove themselves in the world. And that's great.
It's amazing you survived it all. It's amazing you're here. 3 partitions. What is this Polish spirit? I'm fascinated by it. Can you buy it? Can you put it in a bottle? Can you buy Polish spirit? I think you'd sell it all over the world.
Poland is a real big country. I mean, it's a big country, and it's what I really like to say on stage at dance. Say, look at yourself. I mean, you can be proud of yourself. I mean, you have the most influential scientists, filmmakers, musicians.
You know, Krakow is a beautiful city. Had a great time. Took a train here, Warsaw, and spectacular.
For me, the most important, as I didn't know Warsaw, is the first impression you get when you come off the plane, even driving the car, going to the hotel, to what is the immediate feeling. For me, it's a very international city. It's a city that's exploding. It's beautiful what they rebuild, they recreate. I love the old town. I love some streets. I strongly believe that Poland's going to be here because of this kind of international feeling that you have coming here. Culture, painting, music, even fashion. It's amazing.
Well, I had quite an interesting time in Poland. I was quite fascinated by some of the architecture. You know, Poznan has a couple of very beautiful parks, and I like wandering around a little bit. I went for a bike ride actually one day, and a snowstorm started up. So I just kept riding through the snowstorm, and I got some of the strangest looks. People like, who's this crazy man riding a bike in the middle of a snowstorm? But you know, I mean, there was no other way of me getting back. It was either keep riding or walk. You know.
Janusz Kaminski. I've worked with Janusz now. Well, I made Private Ryan, Catch Me If You Can, and Terminal. So I've worked with Janusz 3 times, and I would say, what is the school of Polish cinematography that you came out of? And we talked about, like, what were the movies that you saw growing up? And he said, oh, there's so many great Polish films you just be able to see.
It was an amazing experience, and it was a bit of a roll of the dice because, unlike most American film composers, Maestro Kilar will not play you anything he's written beforehand. You go and you hear what he's done, and you pray that it's good. And I went and it was great.
I saw a production of Andrus Vaida's
the idiot of the last party. He had some Japanese actors performed in Krakow, and that was wonderful.
But the last time I saw him at the Vatican, I told him that I was very much, I admired him also because his work as a poet. And I asked him for permission. I said, may I search into more poems and that we can put it into music? And he told me yes. So I went for with my son Placido, and we started to do this kind of work. And I think we have found out some of the poems, and they are very, very human. That shows the personality of him. There are other ones very much related with religion, but these ones, and they are more the human part of the book, I think they are very strong.
Sure. So much fun. So hard too. All I could manage was 1 minute and 13 seconds in about 4 months. And then I messed it up.
I enjoy his music very much. Yeah. It's what I love is strong melodies, you know. And he wrote wonderful melodies, you know, and they're still there. You know, isn't it wonderful?
Poland, Wembley, 1973. Oh yeah, I was there in the stadium. I can remember the goal, absolutely distinctly, all coming across on the left. I thought he was a little slow. The main thing, that Joseph Conrad, the writer, my favorite, one of my very favorite writers.
Well, I think the passion of Poland is something that strikes me as being the most significant thing. Countries are not about geography. You have landscapes and scenery, rivers and cities, but more important than that, you have people, food and culture, and I think that's the essence of Poland. The spirit of Poland is very powerful. Talk. Talk.
Sorry about the sound, but still you can see what we could do with these interviews collected by one of the journalists over the years, and how different things come to people's mind when they think Poland. Thank you very much. I would like to continue with more questions if you have them, or continue with saying more about any of the subjects that are of interest to you. And thank you.